Morning to you.
Morning, Ger.
Watching Tomás O'Shea out there at 40, you thinking, I shouldn't be managing, I should still be playing, kicking a bit of ball.
Hope for us all yet. Yeah, I might come back. I might have been threatening it. I've taken the boots out of the bag on a number of occasions. Yeah, realised at the weekend that I have a couple of studs missing. So I might just get that organised first before I actually decide.
Sometime around next Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
for a charity match.
Yeah, it looks good there, but you know, you kind of. No, I've done a little bit of training actually. You do miss it, you know. And if you can get back into it and just kick it. Now it'll probably be a different story when I actually get onto a pitch.
Yeah.
But phenomenal achievement by him. Like he's like the old Rolls Royce. He's just motoring brilliantly. Yeah. You know, there's absolutely no difference in him. You know, you can't see anything, you know, physically or even, you know, from a performance level different from even a couple of years ago. No. But he's leading the charge there. You know, it's not like they're trying to protect him either. Like, you know, he has a full-on job. He's being marked by younger guys, older guys, and he's taking it on. You know, it's brilliant to see.
I also think that we've all tuned into the stories about the club games over the last 5-10 years, and we fully appreciate that like teams like Nemo come along and obviously they're a superpower, but the Slough-Neil story has been one of the greatest stories in Irish sport over the last 4 or 5 years, and these games are starting to get the level of attention, and maybe this helps as kind of just setting the mood music for our conversation here about the CPA, is that like a focus on the club game isn't to the detriment of the inter-county game, and isn't to the detriment of the sport, and isn't to the detriment of the amount of coverage that you're going to get. It's just different, and you would have to argue better that more stories are covered than just the Dubs and just Kerry.
Well, I'd say from, you know, the media standpoint, you know, and I even know from coming in here, you even think about, you know, you talk about Dublin week in, week out, and it's just kind of like, where can we go with this story? Whereas, you know, and not, yeah, of course you see plenty of coverage, but I'd say, like, I mean, the different stories within Slough-Neil, the different stories around Nemo, the fact that O'Shea is a Kerry man playing in Cork and his kids are there and all that kind of stuff. Like there's, and I'm sure if you delved into those squads and even more bases, you'd find multiple stories, you know, and real stories, you know, and I'm not saying the inter-county stories aren't real, but an awful lot of it is protected and an awful lot of it is now, you know, media people around it saying, well, you can say this, you can talk here, you can talk there. Whereas the club stuff is probably a bit of a throwback where fellas will just talk and they won't be worried necessarily about X reading this or, you know, someone actually coming back to me and trying to curb what I'm trying to say. And it is healthy. Like, I mean, there's massive crowds going to these games. And I think the more coverage it gets and the more quality coverage it gets, it can only improve it. Yeah. You know, I know I'm moving around a bit, but I was thinking about even, you know, Monaghan at the weekend. Like, Monaghan are arguably punching above their weight for the last number of years with the size of the county and everything else. But then, you know, I've heard people talking about it. Even Duffy mentioned it at Congress, which I was at for my sins. Whatever I did in a previous life, on Friday and Saturday at Congress the weekend past. But Duffy spoke about the Monaghan setup, and I've heard this before because I was talking to Paul Finlay about it, the way they play a lot of league games, and they get a lot of games. Yeah. But you can nearly see that in the way they're playing, you know, that they're very comfortable with each other, you know, and they're a team that are consistently kind of confident in each other, and they're actually they're very comfortable on the ball, fellas know each other's positions, and they're, as I say, arguably punching above their weight, and they've been at that top tier now for the last number of years, and I don't know if there's a direct relation.
It feels like there is though, right?
Maybe there is, you know, like, I mean, I don't think you can have a very strong, it kind of goes back to the club thing. My personal thing on the club thing is, I don't feel you can have a very strong senior club team without having a really strong, say, junior club team, or even, if you're very lucky, an intermediate club team. But if you have a strong junior club team, generally that means that lads are pushing really hard for the senior team, and your senior team should do well. I think the same thing, if there's any read-through, would be that if it's an inter-county setup, if you have a really strong club setup. Now, people will say, well, Slough-Neil, Derry. Okay, and I take that point. But generally you can say that strong clubs generally feed through, and a strong club scene generally feeds through to a strong inter-county team. You know, and I think if you can see by Nemo, I would say whatever they're doing down there and they're starting to get it right again, that will have to start feeding through to Cork. Now, Cork is, as we all know, a different story. Yeah. But I just think that it has to feed into each other. And the club thing, I think there's a massive way to go with the club stuff. You know, I think there's a lot of room for both media attention and everything else around it.
I think part of Pádraig Duffy's biggest frustration was the fact that he's seen everything work well in Monaghan and thought, like, we've given you all the templates just follow the template, and this will make, because everybody gets games, there's starred games at the start of the year, they're handed out, the county players will be available for those games. They introduced a new thing at the end of last year where there's going to be super bonus points for the league matches involving the county players, like 5 points for winning that game and 2 points for winning all the other games. So
he explained that at the weekend. It took him a while to explain it, which will kind of lead you to believe it's not the simplest thing. You know, if you get a person, say, in from, you know, the States, and you said, well, how does this work? And you started explaining, well, if you have your county players, you get 5. And my only thing on that would be, like, if I was playing for, say, Scottstown, and we had a lot of inter-county players, and we were playing whoever you are, right, and you don't have those inter-county players, and you fancied beating us, and then we all landed in with our county players, we hammer you, and we also get 5 points for it. Whereas you actually only get 2 points for beating someone when you don't have county players.
Yeah.
So I don't know how exactly, but do you know what? It's innovative.
And they're trying something.
And they're trying something.
And they're trying to improve a system which already seems to be working very well, which is opposed to well, if it ain't broke, we ain't going to fix it, which is like, you know, at least there's a sign of progression, and they can always go back next year if it doesn't work. So talk to us a bit about Congress before we get to the specifics of what happened with the CPA, because I'm interested in what it's like for an outsider, because you are now officially, despite the fact you're steeped in the GAA, you're officially
No, we were very much an outsider at this one. I was laughing with Michal Braiodi, the CPA. I was laughing with him, saying, you know, will we actually be sitting outside the room in, like, you know, in a darkened room with the stuff just being piped in, you know? But we did manage to get seats at the back, which was great, which was fine. No, it was like, I have to say, it's very, very well run. You know, Croke Park lends itself to it brilliantly. It's done very, very professionally. You know, but you know, just sitting there, if you're sitting there and you just kind of sit down, you kind of say, okay, let's have a look at the actual people who are involved. Like, a lot of grey hair, right? So the average age is probably, I'd say, 65 plus, maybe. Very few women at it. And just a lot of, like, I mean, now there was a couple of younger guys, like, kind of our age, shall we say, not you all, of our age, you know, wearing their club top or something like that. But a handful, you know, you might say 20 to 25. And then, of course, like everything, you know, probably the more vocal people are the people who've been steeped in it for the last 35 or 40 years. And you can certainly feel that there's, you know, it's funny the way the thing is set up, because you sit in a certain area, you know, in the room. So we were, right, obviously the GPA were pretty far down the back, followed by maybe, say, New York and a couple of other foreign ones, and then actually Meath, funnily enough, were beside them. But right up the front are Dublin and Cork, right, which is kind of, maybe it's just by accident, but it's probably
they get in early, like the Germans, put the towels in the seats.
Yeah, well, I think the towels are already laid down for them, you know. So if you're looking at the power brokers, shall we say, I think
are they literally assigned seating? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You get certain places in the room. So all your delegates will come in. If it's 7 or 8 of us, we'll actually be assigned, and we sit down, and then away we go. But look, it's you know, I have to say, Friday night was pretty, you know, ran through pretty quick, about maybe 3.5 hours. It was really just about Duffy and you know, certain eulogies for him. And then Saturday kind of got into the motions. It was funny, everyone got their zapper thing on the Friday. So when you come in, you get your zapper, you know. And then there was, so there was a bit of there was a thesis on how to use that, which was 1 or 2, yes or no. But everyone was told, now lads, make sure you bring your zappers with you in the morning. Wherever you go tonight, don't leave your zappers behind you. I was just kind of thinking, we probably should have just given the zappers out on Saturday morning then, you know, because I can only imagine the amount of zappers that are left behind in various different places over the years. You know, whoever. But, like, I mean, massive. Another amazing thing which people mightn't know is the amount of votes that the foreign, you know, participants and delegates get. You know, like, I was trying to tot them up as they were being called out. I think it's 80 something or something that goes to, like, the Middle East, Australia, Canada, Warwickshire, Ruislip, you know, all over, you know, the States.
Are they all represented in person at Congress?
Yeah. So you'll have your delegates, because they actually call out to say, you know, Ruislip 6 delegates, and they might actually, no, only 5, you know, so only 5. But, you know, that's, so everyone gets them, they tick them all off, you know. So it's quite a big pool. Like, I mean, there's about 300 odd, I think. I don't remember exactly the number, but it's probably about, it's well over, probably, you're talking a quarter of votes are foreign delegates, shall we say, and they're a big swing on certain things, you know. But
do they tend to vote as a caucus? Like really, even within that, are there different?
Well, we'll never know, Ger. That's the thing.
That's a good point.
Who knows whether they vote as a caucus? And that's just the thing about our motion, which was soundly beaten, shall we say. And it's funny, like for people who don't know, what we were trying to pass, we put in 8 motions, and we actually eventually we got our first. We got one to it, which was basically about accountability and traceability. So the fact of, Owen presses 1, and we're coming from the Kerry delegate, and we're meant to press 1 on this, which is yes, but I decided I'm going to press no here. And instead of actually then being accountability and traceability for it, well, which way did you actually vote? No one ever knows. It's just put up on the screen and away you go. The technology is there to do it.
Well, it must be if they've got individual zappers.
Yeah, it's there to do it. It can be actually instantly. It could nearly break it down on the screen.
We'd be here all day. I read that. We'd be here all day writing down but the computer just belches it out afterwards.
Correct.
What was the actual reason? What was is it the whole kind of we don't want to be dictated too much? Was that the essential mood music around this?
I don't want to presume, shall we say, right? But the Cork delegate spoke, and she spoke fairly well, and she was kind of making the point of, that if I can't be trusted by my club to vote the way I'm mandated, well, then people should remove me. But my argument on that is, well, no one will ever know which way you voted, so you could tell them you voted exactly the way you're mandated, but you actually didn't.
Yeah.
And
that's a ridiculous argument.
Yeah, it doesn't really hold true, and I think she was kind of basing her arguments on that people should trust me as a person who's been put in this position to go and carry out what, and we weren't saying that it's nothing about trust, it's nothing about being honest. It's I could go to Congress on the Friday, and I could be chatting with you on the Friday night, and the vote could be Saturday morning, and you could just convince me. You could say, listen, this argument, and we could have a debate around it, and I say, actually, do you know what, Owen's right there, I'm going to switch. But if I do switch, make sure that I can go back to my club or my county delegates and say, well, actually, I did switch, and here's the reason why. It's a democracy. So, and don't be afraid if that's what is the point? I don't see if you're big enough and bold enough to be in that position, and you are assuming a position of responsibility. Well, then, whatever way you vote, be damn sure that you can stand over and say, no, I voted that way.
I saw one of the counter arguments was that this will shut down debate by if you're mandated to go to vote on a topic, then what's the point in debating it, because everybody's already made their mind up when they come. But that's not really the point of this, is it? The counter, so the argument is that you guys are from Kerry, you've been mandated to vote 1, that's all you can possibly do now, and you're stuck with that.
Yeah.
You can't even listen to the arguments, you can't change your minds. But that's not really the point of it, is it?
No, absolutely not. Of course you can. Of course you can listen to it. That's not what we were saying. The whole thing is that, well,
we've come
can we
mandate,
actually just
but we can change our minds.
Correct.
Because that's
Absolutely.
the whole point now.
You can change your mind, you can do whatever you like, but if you do change your mind, because of the accountability and traceability, be in the knowledge that your club or your county people back home, your county board and your club delegates will see that and then may ask you and say, well, Owen, why did you actually change that? And you say, well, actually, I spoke to X and we had a really good debate on it and I felt this was the way to go. Now, they might say, well, you just keep changing your mind and we're actually just going to take you away from that.
Fair enough.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
There was, I have to say, there was a European delegate got up and spoke, and he spoke actually last year as well. And the funny thing about this, the two CPA motions, it seems, which is kind of strange, last year and this year. So last year about the accountability, or not the accountability, but the recognition of the CPA. If you remember, Nicky Brennan had to pull the ripcord on that one because I think pitchforks were going to start coming out at one stage.
Against you?
Yeah, yeah. Like there was 4 or 5 people who stood up and said, there was a fair bit of, let's say, vitriol in their language they were using. But anyway, this guy Tony Bass, who's the European delegate, he spoke last year and then he spoke again this year. And he used words like Trojan horse. He was saying that, we all know where this is coming from. It's coming from a nutty group, as in the CPA.
You're a nutty group.
We were, we're not needed. There's only one association that looks after clubs, and that's the GAA. And all this different kind of stuff. And it was pretty emotive language, I have to say, where she was, her argument was, quite succinct. His was quite emotive and kind of, and just,
When he's making those points, is he getting from the crowd, or is it like everybody going? Cheer?
No, there was very little reaction, but that it doesn't lend itself to that. It doesn't go that way. Some people will get an applause for something after they sit down, but he did. I can't remember if he even got an applause. I think I was just pretty kind of annoyed at that stage, and I can't remember. Like, I mean, you know, his argument was that, you know, this was going to be like a Trojan horse, you know, and he kind of said,
what are you bringing? What?
I don't know exactly what that meant, you know, that then he said that he was all for traceability and accountability in every other walk of life, but just not in this. And that one kind of lost me as well.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know, like, you know, we've kind of, between ourselves and the CPA, we're kind of saying, you know, there's this county board thing, then there's us out here, and we're trying to say, like, all we've ever done, and it's getting to actually John Horan's, you know, nomination, and one of the things he said, which is what he wanted to set up this executive club committee. The first thing we said when we set up over a year ago was that everyone should come together, all the stakeholders, and sit down over a weekend and just create a fixture plan. And I'm kind of going, is that an executive committee for clubs?
You're not going to be on this executive committee, for clarity.
Well, we don't know yet.
Don't know.
We would hope to be. Well, obviously the man isn't even, he hasn't got the foot under the desk yet. But hopefully we've sent a request to meet him, and he said, look, obviously with Congress, he said he'd be delighted to meet us. So hopefully he will meet us now after, in the next number of weeks. And then obviously you'll have the new Director General, so hopefully meet that person as well. And I would hope that we are in there, involved, and hopefully he can, you know, because, like, I think he's a very genuine man, and I know some people who know him very well, and they speak very highly of him. So what I'd hope is that a lot of presidents, a lot of people have spoken about the club, and yes, there's been some stuff done around it, but, like, I mean, the very simple thing which we all know is that a club person just wants to have a set fixture list. And you know, I think it's disingenuous, I think, to say, well, we'll kick it off back down to the counties, the individual counties, because all the various stakeholders, from an inter-county manager to this and this, are all pushing in. I think you still need the leadership from the top on whatever way it is going to be.
The counties have proven incapable of doing it in most cases. There are some standout cases like Monaghan who seem to have got it right.
Yeah.
Most other counties have been incapable of doing it, and so we can repeat the lessons from the past, which is the definition of insanity, or we can actually just change it.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I mean, look, there's a bigger question then of the inter-county calendar and everything else, and they're not mutually, you know, exclusive here. You know, there has to be a tie-in, well, of this, and people are kind of saying, oh, the CPA are all for the April thing. The April thing wasn't necessarily something that we were hanging our hat on, but we were saying that, you know, you have to have some kind of a club period early on in the year, or then people may actually go right through to the end of, like, the start of August, without anything really, you know, a couple of league games or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And fellas will just say, listen, I'm getting 10 games here for training for 6 or 7 months.
But there is also the element of compromise here as well, isn't there? As in, you realised, I think everybody realises that you're not going to get the overhaul that is so badly required here. So at least come away from the table with something, which is what you got in terms of April. And I think you've admitted before, it's not ideal, but at least it's something for the club player. And I think some people then view that as, oh, the CPA got what they want. That was their aim. They got April, and let's see what they think then after April is done.
Yeah,
and that's not necessarily what you wanted in the first place anyway.
No, and it's not. You know, like, I mean, Liam Griffin and the boys would have done up various different plans, which were a whole lot more controversial, shall we say, you know, which was regard of the actual inter-county structure and the provincials and everything else, which actually would have allowed a lot more time to actually get things done. But we didn't even kind of reveal them. I think we showed them to you guys in certain parts of the media. But no, it's not. But, like, I mean, we have said from the very, very start, the main thing is actually, the first thing that should be done, and the last thing that should be done, is that you get everyone around. The CCCC, whoever else, the college, GPA, you know, the GAA itself, obviously, and various different parties, and you sit down and you say, right, blank canvas, where are we going here? Because, you know, I was thinking about this over the last few days, and then I was thinking about the demographic of Congress. like the younger people and the guys I'm say training of 17, 18, 19 and the dropout rates, that these people aren't seeing that. You know, they're not seeing the alarmist statistics that are there, which are actually saying, and it's kind of, I know I don't want to make a direct comparison here, but it's kind of like the Catholic Church to a certain degree, that, you know, the mass goers are dropping off alarmingly. Priests going into the priesthood are dropping off alarming. And then only when it comes to crisis point do they say, whoa, we're actually on our knees here and we need to do something about it. And everything looks great, I think, from a GAA standpoint. You know, revenues are good, all the earnings are good, etc. So up here is excellent, you know, on top of the water. But below the water, I think there's some serious issues. And even deeper issues than, say, some people want to talk about, which is, you know, even just, as I said, the fixtures and inter-county scene and elitism. There are some serious issues at underage level and as you go into adult level, that if they don't, you'll very much find that clubs will have to start coming together, that there'll be a lower participation rates, and all that stuff will start to kick in.
So effectively, the CPA could end up being the voice for those players. Like that, at the moment, you know, oh, we're the association for clubs is the argument from the floor, so they don't need you. But actually, what they do need is the infusion of somebody to represent the views of the players who are 17, 18, 19, 20, up to the mid-20s, who aren't elite intercounty players. Everybody else has a voice, except the coterie of players who effectively make up the reason the thing exists.
Yes.
Which is games for people to play.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, okay, the whole cultural element to the thing, grand, fair enough. But there's also this, the reason that every club gets organised is because people want to play football and hurling.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, look, that would be fantastic, but we're not even even putting our hands up for that role. You know, we're just saying, let's just try and actually make it a bit easier for these people, and let's make it a bit more enjoyable, and let's make it a bit more sure for these people. You know, and that's the certainty is the big thing, and I think people miss that. It's not like, you know, 30 or 40 years ago, or even 20 years ago, where you just picked up the old bag and the boots and you just headed to the game. Like, there's so much more built around it, even at the club level now, and I even see it with the team I'm managing at the moment. Like, these guys want, you know, organisation. They want to know where they're going, and they detest change. You know, but something happens and something gets, like, I mean, they just get so annoyed about it, you know, and it is very annoying for them.
You mean change of fixtures and that kind of stuff?
Change of fixtures and, you know, things being cancelled and this and going on, that going on. So I think this year is going to be, obviously with the Super 8 and everything else, I think this is going to be a serious litmus test for the sticky plasters that we would feel have just been applied. And eventually someone is going to have to grasp the fact that, listen, the sticky plasters aren't working here. We just have to completely take those away, and we have to go back to the patient and see exactly what the situation is. And if Horan is the man for that and a new Director General, well then, brilliant.
All right, let's move on and talk about some of the actual football at the weekend. The Galway footballers look like they have a team worthy of the great Galway football teams. Are we overrating what happens in late January, February and early March?
That's just what Galway people will want to hear now. They're literally going, it's exactly what Mayo people will want to hear. I watched them a couple of weeks ago against Donegal, and I noticed a few different things in them. Like, Galway were always a lovely team to play against. We always had big shootouts against Galway.
Yeah.
And I always got very, very afraid of playing Galway, because you never knew what exact Galway team were going to be. But they had the ability up front to absolutely clean you out as a defender, you know, between, you know, the Mehans and all the Joyces and everything else and the Savages and all these fellas. But there was always a feeling that, you know, if it got into an arm wrestle, that they could snap and you could take away yourself. They're starting to dispel that myth big time. And they're doing it because, yes, they're a bit more solid at the back. I don't agree with certain quotes which are saying they're Tyrone-like. They're not. They still leave an awful lot of quality up front, be it Shane Walsh or Comer. But Comer's actually coming back in a bit more into not a defensive duty, but he's just coming, breaking lines, and he's very dynamic coming out with the ball. They generally leave Walsh and they leave a couple of other guys. So they have a presence up front. And they have got a really good defensive unit, and they've got a serious set of forwards. They've got some really excellent talent up there. And guys who can just take you on and kick scores and kick them for fun. I think Mayo, you know, I think Connacht is going to be really interesting this year, because I'm watching Mayo, and I was trying to say, and we've always said this the last number of years, who can Mayo unearth? And they've unearthed no one again, right? So they're going back to the well again, and they're trying to go, right lads, one more push here. And yes, they're very resilient and they've been able to do this, but eventually that is just going to be, it's not going to be a very big thing that they get hammered, but it's going to be a kind of a 70, 69, 70th minute where they just say, I just don't have this anymore. You know, I just don't have it. And I think Galway's hunger is going to be enormous this year.
The big test always for Galway, though, is Croke Park. And I do think in the Connacht Championship clash, Galway could actually go into that game favourites, and Mayo will probably be a little bit undercooked for that. And the test is, as I say, once you get into the Super 8s this year, as it will be, and how Galway perform there, because, as you mentioned yourself, it is this kind of men behind the ball, but it's a quick break. It's not a Tyrone comparison, it's a Donegal and a Jim McGuinness comparison, really, isn't it?
Yeah, similar enough, yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, how does that translate into Croke Park? Will Croke Park actually make a difference with these tactics, or are Galway set and ready to finally make that breakthrough?
Yeah, they've struggled always. You know yourself. They've struggled in Croke Park. Is it a mental thing? I think Walsh is a serious operator. You know, he's a guy who's a very smart individual. He would be quite belligerent and would be a very tough and forthright man himself. And I think you're seeing that in his team. He was always a very smart player, you know. For the size of him, he just used to link in so well with people. Like, he had Donnellan beside him, so he'd do the very, very simple things, but he'd do them so well. You know, he'd never give a ball away, and I can see that starting to come in this team. There's much less of kind of shooting off the hip, you know. And you have a spell of brilliant football, and then you have just a couple of brain farts happening, and teams are just rattling in goals against them. I think he has decided, obviously, that what we need to do is we will score, but we're conceding a lot at the far end. Does it lend itself? You know, I think the more you play in there, obviously it will help with the the dynamics and the size and everything else, the dimensions of Croke Park. But I can't see how it wouldn't, Owen. If you're confident in the system that you're playing, and you also at the far end have guys who can break at pace and punish you at the far end, I think they could be dangerous this year. You know, I'm not completely buying into the hype, because they have that ability to let you down. Yeah. But I certainly think they're on an upward trajectory. There's no doubt about it. Like, they were everyone's favourites to be relegated.
Yeah. And here they are. I think they've been unbelievably impressive. We do talk about Dublin a lot, but Conor McKeown's made a really good point today in the Herald. Assuming that there's nothing unexpected about his team selection for the Kerry game this weekend, it'll be more than 2 years since he last gave a league starting debut to a defender. So they've obviously got a brilliant defence. Yeah. But they've got the same defence for the last couple of years, and they just need a little bit of. We talk about the embarrassment of riches they have, but if say John Small is gone, and say you were to add another couple of names to the list of players who are gone, if Philly gets injured, and Mick Fitzsimons has a red card that they're trying to get overturned, if Cooper goes, they will have injuries at some point over the championship. It's whether or not 3 or 4 of them happen at the same time in an All-Ireland semi-final or an All-Ireland final that you begin to think, well, actually they don't have an embarrassment of riches right there.
I always felt that the defence side of it was a little bit thin on the ground, but it's only thin on the ground because he has very rarely experimented with the defence. Like, that's the case in point there, that he has a set group of players and he just slightly changes them around. So he has massive confidence in it. Like, you look at the Mayo game at the weekend and Mayo are missing it, but then you look at the Dublin team and you go, that's probably not far off a championship starting team. Yeah. Like, he has all the big guns out there, bar maybe 1 or 2, even up front. Yeah. So like, they're ruthless in the sense of, and even the management team and everyone, like, they do not want anyone getting a win over them. They don't want anyone getting even a psychological edge over them. So they've gone and they've obviously, like, you could kind of think he'll just take the foot off the gas and he'll try to experiment with a lot of younger guys and but he has blooded guys in at certain points. And the one thing I look at from a Mayo point of view, and we say, can you unearth a player, be it a cornerback or a corner forward? It is one of the hardest things to do if you come in as a new player and you're into an experimental team which has another 7 or 8 players. Like, you're on a hiding to nothing, especially as a defender, but even as a forward. Whereas the best way to kind of start to making your name, like a Scully or someone like this, like a Howard, is that you come into an already set unit and you're just added in as part of maybe 10 or 12 that are already there. And you're playing with these guys who are playing with extreme, and then you actually feed off that and you get shown up well. Or you stand out like a sore thumb and you're gone. Yeah. But the other thing is you can kind of get caught between still. Did he play well? Didn't he play well? We hammered them, and so I always feel that you have to be actually playing your best team, and then you link in your one or two who you're thinking, okay, these are the potential guys who are going to make our championship. But on the Dublin thing, the defence has been unbelievable. But the chances of all of them getting injured, Ger, is a hope factor for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
They just seem to be, well able to do it. You've got O'Sullivan obviously to come back in, but the likes of John Small. John Small I think has been one of the best players for the last year, 18 months. That guy is just a formidable force. I think he's better than McMahon and Cooper at what he does, in the sense of he's actually being deployed now to pick up the danger men, and he's very, very good at going forward. He's very dynamic. He's very powerful, and he's also quite forceful. So you're not going to get anything easy in that defence. McMahon, Cooper, all these fellas, they're not going to give anything away easy.
Is there also the case that a couple of those half forwards actually are auxiliary halfbacks if they need them, and really that's where the strength and depth is? When you look at it, it's not on the bench, it's players who are already maybe out in the field who can shuffle back and play right halfback, or maybe somebody else is a sub sweeper who we don't know about.
Yeah, and they do a bit of that, and then so those guys do go in, and they I wonder, they played Tyrone a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you remember that game. And Tyrone exposed them very much with this kind of Stephen O'Neill ball, which was, guys going, say, left to right, and then they would put a pass into the left corner. So in all sense and purposes, it looks like they're going to kick it into the right, into the corner forward, but then they switch it. And that was a real O'Neill thing to do. When you were marking him, he'd make a run one way, and then he'd double back, and the ball would already be there. And they did that really well. But the second half, Dublin just deployed McCarthy, I think, and can't remember who the other person was, but they just sat them literally at the kind of the top of the D.
Yeah.
One in that area went, and they just completely cut it out, and they just said, right, now we try and run through us. So they can play it every way, and they are quite defensive. This idea of that they don't have fellas behind the ball, of course they do. They've lots of fellas behind the ball, but what they do have is, and I've been on the defence about Kilkenny, the one thing about Kilkenny is if they get that ball out and they need someone to win it, he wins it.
Yeah.
He wins it 9 times out of 10, and then he doesn't let it go. You don't get a tackle on him. Now he may go running across the field with it, but he does enough to give time for fellas coming up, and he picks the right pass. Or if he needs to speed it up, he'll give a good ball inside. He's a vital cog in that wheel of defence to attack.
It seems to me that Paul Mannion's going to take that leap this year, just in terms of the forwards in Dublin, of becoming a top 3 potentially forward in the country, because maybe he's been underrated for the last couple of years. Maybe the Connollys and the Brogans have always just been pointed out as the talent in the team, and maybe Mannion's always been more effective from play. But it seems this year, certainly against Mayo on Saturday, he was outstanding, and it seems that he could be a contender for Player of the Year.
He's lightning quick. He's a lot stronger than he was. He can win it probably in a various amount of ways. I think one of his things a couple of years ago, I remember watching him actually playing Meath, and he was the one that everything actually else was matched up pretty well, but he was the one who caused all the damage. But he was quite elusive. He tried to get away from you. Now he's actually running through lads. He's actually holding fellas off, and he has the step if he wants. He's left and right. He's an absolutely serious talent, and he's got gas, which you saw on.
Yeah.
He literally he kept moving away from the cornerback. I think O'Donoghue was.
He did his hamstring at the end of the game, though. Did he? Is that what it looked like? So
Well, that's not good.
No, and that's the type of thing that you just want to now give him enough rest to make sure that when he comes back in the summer, it's not like a perpetual thing.
Yeah.
They're bringing Connolly off the bench, and he's like trying to hit the Hollywood passes straight away, and I don't know, it doesn't look good for the rest of the country, I would say.
No, the only thing is you look at it, right? So Brogan has gone, Mannion maybe potentially gone 8 to 10 weeks, depending on a tear of a hamstring, right? Okay, you have Dean Rock in there. Now, Dean is very, very good at obviously his place balls and everything, but he's a different type of player to those two, right? So, Paddy Andrews hasn't really featured much this year. Paddy's been on the road a long time. Some of those fellas who are kind of tipping towards the 30-odd, like so Costello was there for a while, but he hasn't really broken through. Yeah. So you've kind of gone from a situation where maybe they were thin on the ground in defence, but now actually maybe they're a bit thin on the ground in the forward line.
Yeah, until Conor Callan comes back and picks the ball up in the halfway line, dribbles past 3 and smacks it in the top corner.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. But it may be inside forward. So
yeah.
I'm trying to give people hope.
I know. It's too late.
But the problem also is,
while you enter here.
Yeah, the problem from everybody else's point of view as well is that maybe Basquel and Howard are the real deal. Like, Basquel was man of the match against Donegal.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, and he could come in and and like, I mean, listen, there's a conveyor belt there. There's no doubt about it, and he did show up. He looked like the real deal. But it does take a while when you go break into intercounty. It does take you that 3 or 4 years of just kind of learning and hardening up. Normally, obviously you can have a talent like O'Callaghan and away you go.
Yeah. All right.
It seems like, just one last thing just on Cluxton, it seems like nothing's really changed, because you would have thought, say 18 months ago, you were told that a marker's going to come in and you have to kick the ball outside the 21. You would have thought at that point Cluxton's got to completely redesign his game, and maybe he has, but we haven't noticed it. It's been seamless, this transition. And it seems to me now as well, just kind of on that point as well, that when you push up on a kick out now, it's a completely different game, because everything's compressed between the 45 and the 21 now. You can't go ultra short anymore. So it's a whole new ball game. But as I say, it seems like it's the same old game, and Cluxton's just doing what he was doing 2 years ago.
Same old game. And actually, I watched them closely on the kick. Actually, to be fair, the coverage was excellent, because a lot of times it goes behind the goal and you can really see the way they set up. His greatest ability is the fact that he just stands with like literally 2 steps, not even 2 steps. I think it's like he plants his foot and then kicks. But he can kick it 20 metres or you can kick it 50 metres with that setup. So, yeah, exactly. So if you're a midfielder and you're trying to go, okay, and you obviously get sucked in, say, and you're thinking, will he go over my head here to an 11? You just don't know. Because he literally just takes a step and then bang, he sweeps through it. And before you know it, you're having to back up. And as soon as you're backing up as a midfielder, the guy obviously behind you has the advantage. He's like, getting back to that, the defence is the case. He's just phenomenal. He really is phenomenal. And I think we say it every time. But that is where, to be fair, Beggan is very, very good for Monaghan. He's of a similar type where he's literally just standing behind the ball. Yeah. And he can take that. He has to go back one and then to get more into it, whereas Cluxton literally can just take 2 steps. But if you're the keeper who has to take the 3 or 4 yard run, that's the old.
Too late.
Beggan, the sweeper keeper as well, and in a scheme 2 weeks ago when they got a man sent off, just popped out as a cornerback. Yeah. Gave the extra pair of hands, and his distribution is outrageous.
Very comfortable. Absolutely, yeah. But I have to say, challengers for me, like, unfortunately, Meath are, after the last 2 games, Tipperary are quality outfit. And I have to say, I'm not just making excuses, I think Cavan are really improving. And I think Cavan will actually be a decent team in Ulster this year, because they've married a very good defence now with some really good forwards, and they're doing very well. Tipperary, I think, are going to be a serious force as well, and I think they should really be focusing on trying to get into that Super 8. But I think Kildare have been really unlucky. And I'm not just saying that.
I do too.
Think they've been desperately unlucky.
Yeah, and so I'm not actually that worried about it. So if you were to look at the league table, you go, Jesus, no points, this is terrible, it's a disaster. But actually, they've been in every game. They're not like one of those teams who comes up, gets completely outclassed week on, week out, and you go, oh, Jesus, that was a team who shouldn't be. This is relatively early in the evolution of this team still. Like, it's year 3, and I would advocate that they decide that they have a management team in place who's from the county and understands the nuances of all this crap that goes on in the background. So let them have another 3 years and say, right, we're in the middle of a cycle here, and we're going to see how that goes with this group of players. But
I would think you're right, and I think they should do that, because that's like, you can't turn a situation around, such as, say, Kildare or Meath, in 3 years. You can't. Like, I mean, your first 2 years are literally getting to know guys and getting to know how they work and who are the flakes, who are not, who are the guys who really put it in for you. Year 3 is putting a little bit on it. You have to have at least 5 or 6. And I think they've been desperately unlucky. Like, I mean, even, Jesus, at the weekend, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean,
but they'll bounce back from it.
An unusual situation. Because I hope they use it as like a motivation.
Because, again, they've a shot to nothing now. They're just going to say, right, come on, we just have to go for it and try to see, can we get a couple of wins under our belt.
And a successful year in Division 2 isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to a good team.
No, absolutely.
Assuming it's successful,
Yeah.
Meath, they're going the other way, are they?
I don't, I always feel dangerous talk. I remember a couple of games ago after the Clare game, there was, I think there was a couple of quotes of, we'll be able to hold our own in Division 1. I was like, whoa, let's not go there yet. But again, it's funny, Clare, I think, drew with Tip. I think they should have beaten Tip. Meath hammer Clare. like annihilate them in the second half. Then Clare come out, and Clare are actually getting some okay results now, you know, and then you're trying to follow through a read-through of actually how things are going. And then, you know, Meath come out against Cavan. They've always struggled against Cavan. I remember even just playing against Cavan. We've always struggled against Cavan's style. And that was a poor day, absolutely. Now, maybe the talk of, you know, that Meath were top of the table and that got to them, I don't know. But certainly the Tipperary game, Tipperary are a good team. Tipperary are a seriously good team. Like, I mean, they're you know, it's not like you've got turned over by someone who was, you know, really poor. Tipperary are a very, very good outfit. And I think Tip were completely hijacked by Roscommon the week before, and arguably should be, you know, progressing even more. Are they going back? I think they have to decide. And again, look, I can't comment too much because I haven't been at many of the games. But from speaking with certain people involved, the one thing about the Clare game was that they actually just they took the shackles off and they went for it and they got on the front foot and they kind of really used the pace and power that they have and they had a go. And I think when they retreat and they kind of get into this defensive, I just don't think it suits them. You know, it just doesn't suit the style of play that they're used to. And again, I think you'll probably find combinations that work. And I think there's certain forwards on the team. You can't have the three of them on the team. You decide you're only going to have one of them. You can't have two, and you certainly can't have three. So you have one of those, and then you do something else with the rest. And I think you're finding that. You're seeing it. Interestingly, you're seeing it in Kerry. You know, I think Fitzmaurice is realising if he has Clifford, well then he can't, you know, so he's trying to get his combinations correct there. And you know, unless you're, say, like a Dublin, you know, you can't, you need to just say, right, okay, first of all, we do a la Galway. We make sure that this is set here first and foremost. Now, that doesn't mean being ultra defensive. It just means that you have the bodies who can actually understand that.
The architecture.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Anthony, good stuff. Thanks very much.
No bother, lads.